Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Golf Bag First Look podcast / live stream. This is a preview for the 2022 Players Championship. My name is Drew Matthews. I am the main contributor here at fantasygolfbag.com. And this show is actually sponsored by 4ballfantasy.com. That's the number 4ballfantasy.com. You can draft your majors only best ball teams. So they have best ball for the full season. And now they have a majors only, that starts at the Masters, and we'll run Masters, PGA, US Open, British Open. Only have to draft 6 golfers. You don't have to do any maintenance. We'll count the best 4 golfers every week, every major week. And then you can reap the rewards at the end of the 4 majors at the end of the British Open. So check out 4ballfantasy.com. Also, fantasygolfbag.com is running a deal at the moment. So their first sub back. So if you're a previous member at Fantasy Golf Bag or a new member, you can use the code BAG22, BAG22, for monthly or weekly, and you'll get 50% off that first subscription. So excited for that. And we'll talk a little bit about the golf course. And again, the first look is just essentially taking a first look at the field. Guys that pop in a lot of our data at fantasygolfbag.com. I will encourage you to definitely check out the showdown stuff. So I'll go ahead and share. So this is again, dual stream, live stream, and audio version. I'm just going to bring this up really quick. Excuse me. So the Showdown EAP, this is published each day for the Showdown slate. So it's been a big hit this year. Obviously, from a couple years back, this was part of the main package at Fantasy Golf Bag and has now come back for this season. So we're pretty excited about that. Talk through some examples. Obviously, you can read, if you haven't already, about the spectrum data. And then you can download the sheet and view it. And like I said, for Showdown data, this is some of the best stuff you can use. Avoid using strokes gain as much as you can. Strokes gain for Showdown is really a negative edge in a lot of ways. One is a lot of people still use it, which they shouldn't. And then, so obviously, if you know they're using it, there creates an edge when it's a double edge. You have data that they don't have, and then they're using bad data that's strokes gained for Showdown. So for the Showdown, you can, again, use the code BAG22, and you can use this each day for Showdown and walk through all the players. You can figure out who's playing the actual best, who has the best opportunities. We even added in some really granular par 5 scoring this last week for the API, the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and that'll be included this week, which we'll talk about here in a second. The par 5 scoring is going to be pretty important here at TPC Sawgrass. So let me hop back. Let me go ahead and open the main sheets. I'll kind of remind you what we like to use here. So we have 2 main things. So again, you go to fantasygolfbag.com, the very first tab, or not even the first tab, the home screen at the very top, you'll see our 3 main data points, extended approach and Super Prox, and then Showdown EAP obviously is for Showdown. So what I want to do is I want to open extended approach, and I want to open our Super Prox data. Many of you already are familiar with how to get in here and then download it to Excel, which is really powerful for us to kind of create our own filters or weights. And you'll see with the normal extended approach, there's already a model built into it. So you can, create your own custom model. And again, for simplicity, just go ahead and download the Super Prox. It'll pop up down here. And then for extended approach, I'm going to download that as well. And then open that. So it'll open up. I'm going to pull it up over here to this screen. You can see it. And again, this is already loaded for the Players Championship field with Bryson. He's in here, but he's also marked out, so you don't have to worry about it. And let's see. All right, so we'll talk about this in just a second. As always, let's talk about the golf course first. There might be some weather. So I did pull up the weather, which I normally just talk about a little bit in my article, and then on Wednesday during the live stream at 8:30 p.m. So you can check it out in the same channel you're watching this, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday nights. So looks like we got a little bit, not so concerned with the wind. I mean, there's I don't know what's going to happen on Saturday. Like, that's pretty ridiculous. Sunday back to normal. So you can kind of get a glimpse right off the bat. First thing that caught my eye is rain. Doesn't really play into any of my player pool selections as of yet. I mean, it's still Monday, which is notably early for a first look in terms of like during the day. And I know a lot of other people have already got their early podcast out over the weekend. So kudos to them, but we like to do it Monday. I was still going to stick to that schedule regardless that the pricing came out early. So Thursday, wind looks crazy. I'm not going to pull up the super forecast, which gives it hour by hour, but you can see it's going to be pretty windy Thursday, excuse me, in that area. A little bit of rain. So we'll see how that plays out. Friday, a little bit of rain again, not as much wind, a little bit in the afternoon, but guys should be mostly done with their round by 4 or 5 p.m. Saturday looks crazy. I don't know how that's going to work out. That might just be a push. I mean, if it's really going to be gusting 30 to 40 miles an hour, I mean, I guess 45, they can push tee times back. Let's just say Saturday because it's after the cut. 30 miles. Let's just say 30. We'll just round it to 30. 30 mile per hour gusts, 20 sustained is pretty strong. Golf course is tree lines, but still the wind, even though it's tree line, it almost makes it worse. It'll go between the trees and it'll swirl, and it makes it a lot less predictable. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the weather, but I did want to bring it up. There's some crazy looking weather that we do see this week. And then Sunday, ironically, the nicest day of the week. If it pushes, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to say they're not going to play on Saturday at all. But, I mean, if it pushes into Sunday and then a Monday finish, it's pretty nice weather on Monday. So they may look ahead to that and say, yeah, I mean, we can just avoid this situation. It's a $20 million purse. I think it's 20 million now. It's huge. But yeah, let's talk about the golf course in general, some history on it. I have Data Golf pulled up. Let me remove my face. And then, like I said, a couple interesting points on this golf course in particular. So last year, Justin Thomas won at -14. Rory McIlroy, 2 years prior because of COVID in 2020, he won at -16. Webb Simpson at -18 in 2018, just put on a crazy putting clinic. Siwoo Kim -10 in 2017. And I'm not going to go back further than that, but you get an idea. Low teens is probably the winning score, generally speaking. We know we have weather this week, so we'll see how that plays out. But the interesting note for Justin Thomas. So Justin Thomas won at 14 under last year. He actually played the par fives at 14 under. So we have a pretty good idea that the par five or the par fours can be pretty tough on this golf course. Like, they're not necessarily long. You can even see it right off the bat, 7,100 yards. It's not a long golf course, but there are quite a few less than driver holes. And then the par fives are really the scoring opportunities. 2 and 9 are reachable. 9's a beast, but a lot of guys can reach it. And then obviously 16, I think everyone in the field can reach that. So not too concerned with that. And then 11 guys, the longer guys can go for it. Shorter guys may lay up just because there's a lot of water. So par 5 scoring will actually be pretty important this week. And like I said, we have the data for a couple really granular par 5 stats. And I think that's going to be interesting to look at this week. I think par 5 scoring, I hate talking about par 4, par 5, par 3 scoring. But for this golf course, I think there's quite a bit of an edge. And I even saw it last week. I posted a picture on Sunday night in our Fantasy Golf Bag Discord. Let me see if I can pull it up really quick. So there's 2 players. They both made the cut. This was at the API. So this is interesting. I wish I had it up. I can share it on the screen. I'm just going to talk through it really quick. Thomas Peters finished T32 at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Taylor Pendrith finished T42, so 10 spots higher at the Arnold Palmer. Thomas Peters scored 50.5 points. Taylor Pendrith scored 63.5 points. So literally 13 points more for Taylor Pendrith. And he was 10 places higher. He had 5 more bogeys. The kicker was he had 2 eagles and Thomas Peters had 0. The eagles are worth 8 points each. So even outside of just the Players Championship, guys that are going to play well here probably are going to score well in the par 5s. I think that's a given. The DFS scoring for guys that are going to score well in the par 5s is really a big deal. I mean, I never saw it at such a level of like two guys, because normally you're looking at guys that finished top 5 versus top 15, and you're like, yeah, this guy scored, had 3 extra birdies, so he actually scored more fantasy points than the guy that finished 7th place. Well, this guy finished 32nd or 42nd and 32nd, and the 2 eagles was a 13-point difference. I mean, that's huge. That's literally placement points. I mean, that's like he placed like 15 places higher. So I think outside of just in contention, guys are going to have to score well on the par 5s. The scoring on the par 5s this week, even going forward, obviously, if the par 5s are semi-easy, like there's a lot of guys that can go for it in 2. Look for guys that can make eagles. Look for obviously the longer guys, but guys that are aggressive that tend to go for those greens on the par 5s and 2 at least 50% of the time, every single event. You could look at weighted to the field, but generally speaking, looking for guys that go 2 or 3, 4 times around, and that's going to definitely help the scoring. So keep a close eye on that. Outside of that, it's really a ball striking golf course. So we'll talk through the course, and then we'll dive into our Super Prox, which was really big last week for Nail and Scheffler. Pretty excited about that on Sunday with him. And then the extended approach just gives you a little bit more data that you can model. We have some rankings or some weights you can rank. So let's talk a little bit about the golf course. So like I said, 7,100 yards, not short, but not long for sure. 283-yard driving distance, so similar to last week. In fact, let me pull up Data Golf for the Arnold Palmer. I don't know if it'll show last week's result or the year prior, 2022, I guess. So you can see, even last week, 7,400 yards, the driving distance was 285. Players Championship, 7,100 yards, 283. So it's a lot of the same deal with less than driver on a lot of holes, which is pretty amazing, to be honest, because there's some holes that are really long and guys are hitting 3-wood or iron off some holes and they still have a wedge in. Plus they're hitting wedge from like 160 nowadays. But still, it's a pretty less than driver centric golf course. So not too concerned with not really too concerned with weighted driving distance. I think it helps with the par 5s, which I think you could maybe potentially double count. So I'll be looking at driving accuracy. We have that weighted for the field. And then the driving distance, I will use that together. And then obviously our spectrum numbers we have off the tees, which we can use. So driving accuracy and green regulation is the next 2 things we look at. 65% driving accuracy, 68% green regulation. So not really too penalizing for the driving accuracy. Most of the driving accuracy numbers, or the driving distance numbers, I should say, is because of the hole setups. There's holes that are dog legs or they kind of pinch in, and guys are just kind of forced to lay up. Even number 2 is a par 5, and it dog legs so hard to the left in the first 350 yards, then it kind of dog legs back to the right slightly. Guys have to hit 3-wood off that tee and either hook it, if they're right-handed, obviously, if they have to hook it, or they lay back with an iron. Very few are taking driver on that hole. There's too much risk. If you go through the fairway or blow it a little bit right, there's out of bounds to the right, and it's just too much risk. So small example, but basically the driving distance is because of the course layout, not so much the penalization of the rough. There's a lot of trees, so it's penalizing if you hit in the trees, but it's more the course layout. Green regulation, not too concerned with that. Because we're weighting this a really strong field to other people, I will obviously use greens and regulation, which we have weighted. And that's pretty much it. Let's see. I don't really have anything necessarily interesting that I can speak to here. If we look at the leaders for green regulation, outside of guys that missed the cut, who played 2 rounds. John Rahm, T9, Lee Westwood, second, Doug Gim here, T29. Again, I'm looking in this column here for the green regulation. A lot of guys in the top 10. Siwoo Kim, Jason Kokrak, Zalatoris, 21st, Charles Howell III, T9. So this is kind of a descriptive stat in a certain way, but we can really look back in recent form for some of these guys going into this week. Green and regulation's pretty stable. Like, you can get a pretty good idea if you're weighting green and regulation to the field, who's really hitting it solid, we'll say, like consistently well, hitting a lot of greens. That's a good sign. Even off the tee, green regulation rate off the tee is correlated. So if you see a high green regulation rate in our EAP data, that's a pretty good sign that they're driving it well. And then obviously you can just back into the number by looking at weighted driving accuracy and stuff we have. I don't know if they have driving accuracy. There's accuracy and distance. So let me see if I can remove some of these strokes gain numbers. Don't care about that. We'll just leave tee to green up. So here's the two. So we just looked at green and regulation. Driving accuracy, you can see, is a little bit less correlated for the actual tournament. T58, T35, T22. Charles Howell did okay. Fitzpatrick did okay. But in this, the driving accuracy is not as important. I'm surprised the driving distance is really important. Yeah, I mean, Justin Thomas is up there, but that's kind of just, he's just long. But you can see a lot of guys hit it long and didn't really fare too well. So it's really a green and regulation. We can speak to a little bit of driving distance for the par 5 scoring, but I think the focus for me, for a lot of the players that are outside, the top 50 in the world, is going to be looking at their recent green regulation rate to try to find good solid values that can play this golf course. And the other thing too is we haven't seen a very good trend, I don't think ever, on this golf course with course history. Obviously it's a super strong field, so that's part of the problem. But just going back through some of these results, if I were to pull up the top of the leaderboard, you won't see a lot of the same names pop every single week. Honestly, I don't know. Just looking at this really quick, the top 10 from 2019, I'm not sure if a single person cracked the top 10 in 2021. It doesn't even look like the top 20. So if I hop back to 2021, Brian Harmon, maybe. I think I'm just speaking off of memory. John Rahm both finished, I think, T11, T9. Who was that? Brian Harmon. Let's just take a peek. Yeah, Brian Harmon. So he finished T8 in 2019. So he's the only one. And this is just the last 2 years. But for the most part, you don't see a lot of the same guys play well here every year. It's a little bit fluky in that sense. I hate to use the word fluky, but I feel like if you have the best players in the world playing, you should see the same names tend to fill the top 10 and the top 20, and you don't. You get a really mixed variety of guys, which is fine. It makes for good TV. It's fun to watch. But for me personally, if I'm looking at a golf tournament, and the Masters is kind of a bias, obviously, but I mean, the Masters, you see the same top 10 almost every year. Like it's literally carbon copy year after year. Most of the top 10 finish in the top 10 the next year, or the top 20 into the top 20. Then players is really not that case. So I would not pay too much attention to course history. I think course experience is pretty valuable. So I would look at guys that are not making their debut. I won't cut everybody out, but I definitely think that experience on this golf course is pretty important. So that's about it on the golf course. You can see the approach distributions. We'll talk about that in just a second. Obviously, that's in our Super Prox data. Pretty similar over year. 125 to 175. You got about 40% of the shots in 2021. 2019, a few less than 125 for whatever reason, and still 35%. Most of it's going to fall in that 125 to 200. So pretty wide range there, but that's pretty much it. So with that being said, don't think anything else stands out. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the data. So I will pull up, we'll start with Super Prox first, and then we'll walk through the extended approach data. And that's where we'll model it, and we'll talk through some top guys. So if you're listening on the podcast format, hang in there. We are going to talk about my favorite plays just right off the bat. And again, it's a first look. So there's other stuff that goes into my consensus in my core article and stuff like that. But this is a really good starting point to see who pops. It may give you some ideas to look into these guys further. And obviously we'll talk about values, because there were some pretty strong values last week that paid off along with the top guys in Super Prox. So if you open up Super Prox, It's already sorted by salary. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. And again, you can view this at fantasygolfbag.com. If you're listening to audio and are curious what it looks like, there's a sample available you can download to see what all we offer. And then obviously, if you watch this on Twitch or YouTube as a replay, you can see what I'm looking at. So hopefully this does help you in that regard. All right, let's talk about it. So again, it's sorted by salary. 11K, John Rahm, Rory McIlroy 10.8, Colin Moore, 10.7, on down the list. So overall, really major-esque pricing, pretty soft. You see Max Homa down here at 7,500. What was Max Homa last week? 8,300, 8,700, something like that. Gary Woodland had a good finish last week, 7,400. So very soft pricing. So that's the first thing I'll speak to. A lot of good ways to build lineups. You can go stars and scrubs in a sense, and there's plenty of values that you can at least pick from. Generally, in these stronger fields, the best course of lineup construction is balanced. We see that quite a bit. So use up the salary, use up 49.9, 49.8, 50K. Don't worry about salary or dupes. I know that's a point of contention against some people, but there's a lot of unique ways you can build when there's no position slots in golf. Unlike NBA or NFL, you're really handcuffed. If you start with the three same guys, you get handcuffed in the same values pretty much in other positions. In golf, it's not the same way. So feel free to use up as much salary as you can, and starting balance is a great way to go. We'll talk about it again Wednesday night, but like for building single entry or hand builds optimally, the way that I found works well for me and a lot of other people that I've coached on this is kind of picking guys in your head that you're willing to play at the top. And again, I just talked about this on Twitch Wednesday night, so you can go back and listen to the full thing. It's near the end, I'm pretty sure, but you can go back and listen to this full spiel. And I pull up the Rotor Grinders lineup HQ and walk through, literally hand building one with the same logic. So step one, get your top guys narrowed down to a few that you would want to start a lineup with. It doesn't have to be just one guy. If you really are settled on one guy, then this goes out the window. But for me, let's just say, I want to play Colin Moore. I want to play Victor Hovland and Xander Schauffele, Hideki. Let's just pick out, 4 guys. And I'll build, just say this for 3 max or single entry. You got a couple guys in your head. Now from there, you go down into the mid-range and start picking out your favorite mid-price guys. So maybe that's Adam Scott, who's won here before. Played really well last week. He had a bad third round, which a lot of people did. Sung JM played well. So we'll just, pick out those 2 right there. Go down into the 7K range, pick out a couple you really like. Max Homa has been a stud all year in a lot of our data. So probably go back to that. Terrell Hatton played well last week. Go to that. So now you have an idea of how much salary you have left to get up to one of your high-priced guys. Maybe it says if you play Colin Moore, you have to play a $6,900 guy. But if you play Xander Schauffele, you can play a $7,900 guy. Like there's a big range in the values based on that 4th pick in your 6-man roster, or 5th pick, I should say. So just a little refresher on the lineup construction. It's always best to kind of leave the top range void of a decision. Narrow it down for sure, but this is, again, single entry talk. Build out the mid-range, build out a value. Maybe you just have a value that, hey, I just want to start my lineup with this guy. We'll just say it's Lanto Griffin or Sepp Straka. I just want to start my lineup with Sepp Straka, and that you nail that. And then you go back up to the mid-range. And then finally you get your high-price guy, and you really have a good idea of what you're working with for your last play. Really helps out instead of you getting jammed at like 7,200, and then you have to figure out which of the 5 you want to change players and swap them out. So little short spiel on that. Let's talk about the procs and what the data shows for us here. Like I showed in Data Golf, the majority of approaches is coming from 150 to 175 and also that 125 to 150. So you can see that here. Everyone gets a different ranking based on, not a ranking, a different weight based on their history here at the Players. So you can see like Rory McIlroy has actually more shots from 125 to 150 than Justin Thomas has the last two events here at TPC Sawgrass. So that's weighted appropriately. We're going to weight the same number of shots from 150 as we weight from 125 to 150 for Rory McIlroy. So if that makes sense, we're basically trying to do this apples to apples from a proximity standpoint, using the course data and the player data we have available. And then the easy way to just kind of sort through really quick on the highest ranked guys, I'm going to look at overall rank, high to low. Webb Simpson does not have any results in the last 5. So let's do this. Take that blank out. And then the sample size, like Shane Lowry only has the rounds from the Honda. So there's a red indicator down this right side that shows if somebody potentially, again, I hate to use the word fluky data, but in terms of the shorter sample, maybe they had a really bad 2 rounds and they missed the cut. And that's all the rounds that we have. Or they had a really good 1 round and missed the cut. Like they played poorly on Thursday, really good round on Friday. It kind of jacks their proximity up, and that's only 2 rounds. So this is just a good way for you to identify it. So right off the bat, again, Sheffler is going to top the charts for us. A lot of those yardages last week were that 200 to 225, but we also had 175 to 200, which he is very, very, very good at. He's 97th percentile there. So Scotty Sheffler, let me just filter on the top guys. Above average for sample. There we go. Scotty Sheffler, Doug Gim at 6,400. Taylor Moore has no history here, so this is just using like the field averages for the proximity, but Taylor Moore's been playing pretty well. Sample size is fine. 69th percentile. Nice. Taylor Moore, Hideki Matsuyama, John Rahm, Russell Knox, Will Zalatoris, Gary Woodland, Matthew Neesmith, interesting name that shows up there. Very interesting name. At 150 to 175 is tip tops for him. So that's just a couple right off the bat that I'm listing out that I will have a lot of attention to the next 2 days. I will obviously use the EAP data to kind of cross-reference this, but the Super Prox data has been very good. And then you're just trying to use our other data to make a educated decision on line of construction around the core guys. So like for me, Scotty Sheffler is probably going to be popular. I haven't looked at the ownership yet. I'm hesitant to play him when I played him so much last week, over 10K. So we'll see how Sheffler kind of grades out with his history. But like Hideki's a great play. We played him last week. Showdown, he really played poorly on Saturday and played extremely well Sunday, but his showdown data looked great. And obviously his longer term data that we have looks good for this golf course. John Rahm, we'll see at 11-1. I think he's actually going to be lower owned. I think people are finally, it's a major-ish pricing. So the balance builds make a lot of sense and they're easier to stomach, your lowest price guy being Max Home at 7,500. As opposed to last week at 7,500, who was at Tom Hoagie, who almost missed the cut, but like a Tom Hoagie or somebody, Lanto Griffin, that's Max Home was a different quality, obviously. So it's just a very good way for us to look at it. And obviously, if you want a bigger sample, we even have the last 10 tournaments, which I'll just see if there's any overlapping names here. Again, above average for the sample size. Make this a little bit bigger. Whoops. Jeez. There we go. Eric Van Rooyen pops up in the last 10. Interesting. So like that would be one that he didn't show up in the recent form, the 5T. I'll look up Eric Van Rooyen and look a little deeper into what his last couple results look like. And maybe he's a play at 7,100. Russell Knox shows up again. Makes a lot of sense. I think his home course is here actually too. Not that home course advantage really matters at TPC Sawgrass. Sheffler, Hideki Matsuyama show up again, 3-4. Russell Henley makes a lot of sense. Lucas Glover, 6,600, very cheap Lucas Glover. Joel Damon, Cameron Smith. That's nice to see Cameron Smith show up. He'll probably be a popular play this week. And then real quick, Tom Hoagie, Kazire, Rahm, Wise, and Woodland. Woodland shows up twice. So that is the Super Prox data. A really good way to look at it. Like I said, just go to fantasygolfbag.com. If you're not already a member, you can use Bag22 for 50% off and get a nice preview of this going into the major season. I mean, the Players Championship is basically a major with the field. And then I've talked extensively about Spectrum, which is a great tool for us to use. Let's talk about the EAP. So this is the main extended approach model that we have at fantasygolfbag.com. Again, I love starting with Super Prox. It's a really cool tool the way we built it. But the EAP has more data at a macro level versus the granular approach data that the Super Prox has. That's kind of course centric. So what we're going to do is we have this model ranking here. I'm just going to use the last 5T. Let's see. And we're going to build a model over here on the right. So I don't know why I can't scroll. We're going to reopen that. Lost my scroll bar. All right, here it comes. Yep, now we're back. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Yeah, make it a little bit bigger, I guess. So we have two options, 5T and 10T. And this will be the part of the podcast I'll talk through guys that pop out immediately in terms of a first look. So we're going to model this out. We have our custom rank column here. We have all of the data. You can see Spectrum is identified again here. It's a huge benefit over strokes gained is using Spectrum. A couple new stats, which I talked about in our Discord. If you have questions about any of these, please reach out or hop in the Discord, and we have that available for you. And then let's go ahead and talk through how we want to kind of rank our golfers. So we already kind of have an idea that driving distance isn't necessarily correlated to this golf course for the actual event. So again, what I mean by that is the two sides of the coin is one is if you had someone come into this event gaining strokes off the tee or, weighted driving distance above the field, that's positive. That's different than in this tournament gaining significant strokes off the tee or gaining significant distance against the field. So I will use Spectrum off the tee. I'm not really concerned with driving distance, so I won't use that. There we go. So you can see all the data. I'm going to use Spectrum off the tee, Spectrum approach. I'm probably going to change that weight. Spectrum putting I like this week. Used it the last couple weeks. It really helps you weed out guys that just can't putt, or at least have been putting poorly for an extended period of time. So you can manipulate that higher or lower. If you want to use no putting, that's fine. I'm going to use some putting. I want to weed out the guys that aren't likely to make many putts because they haven't shown they've made any putts over the last 5 or 10 tournaments. Number of approaches is a sample size. 5% is fine. Driving accuracy. So let's go ahead and use a little bit of weighted driving accuracy. Our driving accuracy and driving distance numbers are considered plus driving accuracy plus driving distance in terms of we actually filter all of our accuracy numbers on holes where guys are hitting the intermediate rough or the fairway. So it's relative to the field, but we count intermediate rough as the fairway, similar to data golf. But if you think about how golf courses are set up, it's not really it's not really hard to be off the fairway by a foot. The primary rough is more of an indicator of an errant shot. Intermediate rough's borderline, and we'd rather skew it towards accuracy. So the driving distance is similar. We only weight driving distance on holes where the average drive is over 275. So we're not weighing like Pebble Beach hole number 1. That's like 260. That doesn't help us any. Or RBC Heritage where some hole is like 240 off the tee, stuff like that. So weighted driving accuracy, let's use a little bit there. Green regulation is going to be pretty big. Let's jack green regulation up to 20%. Weighted procs inside of 6 feet, not concerned with. And that helps a little bit with the recent knowledge of like the Honda Classic was very difficult for guys inside of 6 feet. If you pay attention to our showdown data, you probably notice this quite a bit. So I'm not concerned with weighted procs inside of 6 feet. It just that's going to skew us a little bit against guys that played last week. Again, it's weighted, so it would help, but there just wasn't that many shots. So in a certain sense, it would skew anyone that hit maybe one shot around inside of 6 feet with their approaches over the field. So 12 feet, I'm actually going to take out. Let's take that out. 18 feet, we'll use positive approaches. We'll move down to 10%. Weighted proximity inside of 18 feet will be 15%. Or you know what? We'll do 10%, 18 feet, 5%, 12 feet, just to give a little extra boost to someone that may be hitting it closer than the field on average. So again, this is super basic. You can manipulate this any way you want. Our biggest focus and what I'm about to reveal in terms of the guys at the top of our rankings will be centered around green regulation, spectrum off the tee and approach, approaching green regulation, kind of double counting there along with weighted proc. So again, you can create your own weights or manipulate it. Maybe create like 3 or 4 models, a mixed modeling system, and then see who kind of crosses 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 4, however you want to do it. So let's take a look. Let's reveal this. We're already 36 minutes in. As always, guys, appreciate you tuning in to the First Look show. I know it's somewhat difficult for audio only, and then with the video, I think it provides a big benefit, but hopefully this does help. Custom rank. We're going to filter out 2 guys. Or not 2 guys, I'm sorry. Bryson DeChambeau, since he's out. And then we're going to filter on custom rank. And what we're going to have to do is filter out Webb Simpson because he has no rounds. So take that out. Excuse me. Get a drink of water. All right. Sorry about that. So, again, right off the bat, Shane Lowry is top for one. Spectrum approach is really high for him, which is good. I mean, that's a good sign. We only have data from the Honda. So again, it's 4 rounds, all from the Honda. Weighted prox numbers look great. And again, it's all from the Honda. But you can see, I think there's actually something to using birdie or better this week. Birdie or better kind of goes hand in hand with putting, but it also depends on the player. Par 5 scoring is a big part of it. So if we use par 5 and we kind of filter on above average for par 5 scores, this might give us a really good, what did I do? Below average? Hang on. Let's see. Gotta love Excel. Nice freezing up. What I wanted to do is filter on, excuse me, weighted prox, weighted birdie or better, weighted prox inside 18 feet, and then the weighted par 5s. And I want to get an idea. Oh, that's why. Why is it frozen? Let me hop out of Super Prox. Wow. Well, that's fun. Let me hop out of this thing. Redo it really quick. This shouldn't take too long. Apologies. This machine is a real trooper. It's running the data, which is pretty deep. And then I have the live stream window open. It's trying to do a green screen. It's like, it's a trooper in terms of not dying yet, but it's close. So apologies. Let me redo the model real fast. Maybe I can do this off of memory. Clear that. 15, 15, 10, 5. This was 10. That was 15, I think. And then a weighted green regulation was 15. Easy. There we go. All right, so we're back to where we were. So we got the model up. We're going to do our custom rank, largest to smallest. We're going to take out the blank for Webb. And then the weighted prox, or sorry, not weighted prox, weighted par 5, par 3, and par 4 scoring. It's weighted to the field, so lower is actually better. That was my problem. I did it above average, and I should have done below average because it's technically a score. So below average, and that would be a pretty good list, like right off the bat. I would try to build a lineup using this. Billy Horschel at 8,100, Max Homa 7,500, Xander Schauffele 9,700, John Rahm 11,1. I mean, I would at least try to fit in some John Rahm this week. He's one of the only guys, I think, that finished in the top 15 each of the last 2 times they played here, 2019, 2021. Joaquin Niemann, Scotty Sheffler, Victor Hovland, Russell Knox. So again, it's a strong field. So no, I mean, listen this down. It's not like it's anybody crazy jumping off. But yeah, let's I think the weighted par 5 is actually pretty valuable. So we'll definitely use that. So here we go. Excuse me. All righty. Let's talk through the top guys, and then we'll try to rattle off the low guys again. We'll try to hammer that out at the end on Wednesday, but for the sake of the time. 2 big points that stick out in the 10K range. One is Colin Moore at Cal doesn't have a lot of data for us. He only has 4 rounds. His weighted par 5 scoring doesn't look great. Again, it's only 4 rounds. So you kind of got to, maybe jump back to 10T and you can take a look at him. He's got 12 rounds in the last 10, but he's been playing overseas in Saudi Arabia or Dubai, wherever, for the DP World Tour. So that's the reason why he has less rounds than a lot of these other guys. But the top guys, again, is Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm off the tee and approach looked great. Weighted par 3, par 4, par 5 scoring is all under the field. Green regulation is really big. And this is recent form. So I know everyone talks about how bad he was the last couple of weeks. But if we go pull up Jon Rahm on Data Golf, outside of putting, everything else has been pretty strong. You can see that right across the board. So I may be wrong. Maybe people will go back to him, but it's been very frustrating to roster Jon Rahm, excuse me, over the last couple months. So we'll be going back to Jon Rahm at 11-1 if we can fit it in. Justin Thomas sticks out. Obviously had success here last year. And a lot of that was putting, to be honest. But you saw the 14 under par on the par 5s go there. Victor Hovland the same way. So the top 3 guys over 10K in order that I would rank them. I think Jon Rahm at 11-1. If this ownership stays down below 15%, which I don't know if it will, but I hope it does. Jon Rahm at 11-1, Victor Hovland at 10-1, and then Justin Thomas at 10-4. Those are the top 3. 9K range. A little bit different. Like I've been mostly off Cantley this year, which hasn't worked out. The times he has played, I mean, he's a very good player. He's one of the best in the world, obviously. But from a data point, he hasn't been hitting his irons that well. If there's anything we know about this golf course, it really does come down to the irons. It doesn't always correlate off of recent form into the irons. Like some guys that come here, Webb Simpson didn't have the best irons, but he putted lights out. Justin Thomas struggled. I don't remember what he shot in round 1 or round 2. And then just went lights out on Saturday and then hung around on Sunday. So the putter can save a lot of guys, which is why I wanted to weigh it. But for the 9K guys, let's see. Xander Schauffele sticks out. Scotty Sheffler obviously sticks out. Surprising here that Xander is above Scotty. Scotty's been good. I think it's because we're weighing approach and off the tee the same. And we probably want to give a little more bump to approach. And I bet that would bump quite a bit back to Scotty Sheffler, because Scotty's irons have been way better than Xander's. And the off the tee is slightly worse. I mean, it's not worse. It's just slightly less than as good as Xander's. That's probably a better way to phrase it. And Hideki. I really like Hideki this week. I think he's at a different point. I don't know if it's after the Masters win or something. Mentally, he looks different. He looks more relaxed. Still the same Hideki, one-handed to 5 feet, but he's stat-wise, he looks great. And I think mentally he's a little bit more at ease, which probably happens if you're a Japanese guy that wins the Masters and you go back to Japan. You're probably at ease for night after night, if you know what I mean. Hideki, I do like Hideki at 9,600. And that's it. I mean, Jordan Spieth is never going to pop. We'll see what the ownership is. He's not a scary fade, but he's one of those where I feel like you reap more rewards when you play Jordan Spieth than the times you fade him. We can even go back and look at Jordan Spieth really quick. And again, Jordan Spieth would not be a top target. Xander, Hideki, and then Scotty would be the top 3. Again, it depends on ownership a little bit on Scotty. But those are definitely the top 3 I want to look at. But like for, excuse me, for Jordan Spieth, even this year, he's been all over the place. He's been trending up a little bit the last couple starts in terms of ball striking, but he doesn't really crush you a lot. If we look at last year, he was starting to get popular at this point in time in the year. But even prior to that, I'm not sure anyone really knew he was about to turn it around as well as he did. But he rattled off a T4, a T3, T15, T4, a T9, a win, a third, a ninth, a second, 18th, 19th, second, 12th. I mean, it's just crazy. And for a guy with that much upside, this golf course is not going to reward length off the tee necessarily. Jordan Spieth is not a bad course fit on this golf course. Let me go and pull up his excuse me, PGA Tour events, the players. So yeah, I mean, his course history, no one's going to play him. I think Spieth's an interesting one this week. And like I said, there's not a lot of course history on these guys. I mean, like even maybe Justin Thomas. I didn't look at Justin Thomas's recent form or course history before we got into last year. But I mean, it's mixed. He looks like he's handled this golf course better than Spieth has. But outside of a T11, he's got a T75, a T35, a T11 in 2018. So like, okay, that's decent, but no trend. I mean, a top 3 at 2016, at least he showed upside. Excuse me. And then same with, let's see, Rory. I think Rory probably had the best course history of anybody that ended up winning it. Yeah, so like a T8, T6, T8. So like he had a nice run there. That's impressive. T12, a T35, then a missed cut, and then he won. So it's funny how they kind of bounce back in that sense. But he's missed the cut last year. It's just a very weird golf course in terms of course history. Just wanted to point that out. And then, I mean, Cameron Smith is not looking great in our 5T, so that would be something worth looking into a little bit deeper. In the 10T, Cameron Smith is a good bit higher. So definitely would look into Cameron Smith also for this week. Excuse me. Oh, struggling. It's been like 3 weeks of this, like allergies / it's not COVID, but like allergies / cold / sinus infection. I don't know, but the cough is really annoying. So apologies for those listening that I'm just coughing in your ear. All right. 8K range. Let's talk about the 8K range. Shane Lowry, I said, only 4 rounds of data, very top. I'll probably have a good bit of exposure to Shane Lowry. I don't see anybody in this range being super popular. I mean, there's no one really blew it out of the water. Maybe Tyrrell Hatton when we get to the 7s gets a bump, or Fitzpatrick makes sense that he would be pretty popular in that 7K range. But in the 8Ks, it's pretty wide open. For reference, Zalatoris is 8,900. He's fine. He's probably going to get played. Daniel Berger, Louis Oosthuizen. I'm curious what they do with Berger. Oosthuizen probably gets played. Brooks and Tony Finau are probably lower owned in this group. Joaquin Niemann, Sung J M, Adam Scott, probably even 8% ownership across those 3. Billy Horschel probably on the low end as well. And then Shane Lowry, I'm not sure what people do with. I mean, again, the data looks really good, but we all know it's only 4 rounds, so it's not just short samples are tough if you want to lean into them in terms of this. This is a really good sign. I want to be on it before everyone knows the longer term form looks good. But in this range, really, Joaquin Niemann, Billy Horschel has been playing really well this year, and Sung Jae. I'll keep going back to Sung Jae. I think that's a really good move on this type of golf course. And all these guys gain strokes putting. Tony Finau is the only one losing strokes in this range, which is interesting. All right, 7K range, and then we'll wrap it up with the 6Ks for this first look. Let me just trim out the above average guys for our ranking just to make it easiest. So 7K range, and I'll try to bounce around in terms of my favorite guys. Without even looking deeper, Max Homa will probably be one of the top guys I play at 7,500. Played him a lot last week. It paid off. Played him a lot the week before. Paid off. He's playing extremely, extremely well. Fitz played really well. Matthew Fitzpatrick played really well overall last week. Did not make a lot of birdies, but very consistent. And he's actually, ironically, a very good par 5 scorer. So you can see here, we have 8 rounds of data for Fitz in the last 5 tournaments. He is negative 0.3. He's gaining 0.3 strokes on par 5s against the field. That's really good. I'm not sure if there's anybody at the top that gains that much. So from a par 5 scoring aspect, Fitz isn't the longest. It's probably a lot of wedges, and he's very good with it. So Fitzpatrick, Max Homa, 77, 75. That's a good start. Paul Casey, I mean, he shot 83 on Sunday. Probably going to play him again. I'm not that burnt by Paul Casey, but he was bad. But I'll play some Paul Casey. Russell Henley with his irons, Bermuda greens. There's really, at the price, there's really not much I can say bad about Russell Henley. It's going to be an iron game. His irons are some of the best in this range. Proximities, if you look down the board for Russell Henley and proximities, pretty good. Strokes gained, 53%. He's positive approaches, 2% gain on the weighted prox inside of 18 feet. Yeah, so Russell Henley's good. Gary Woodland's playing really well, and this is a good golf course for him at 7,400. Tringali, I'll go back to Tringali. Corey Connors. So Corey Connors is interesting. I played him in Showdown last week. I faded him for the full week, and he played really well. He played really solid. So I don't know if maybe we're getting the Corey Connors back that we're used to from last year. Let me pull up his card really fast. But like, again, the proximity numbers that we showed for Showdown last week, he wasn't necessarily popping, but he was very consistent from inside of 30 feet and 24 feet, which for that golf course was huge. So yeah, you can see he was trending down, miscut, poor putting. Then he started losing strokes on approach, T38, miscut, which isn't a good sign. And last week was a little bit back to normal. Off the tee, he gained an approach, he gained a shot, and finished T11. So he's probably going to be on the popular side just off of that finish alone last week with his 7th place finish here last year. So, excuse me. So I think Corey Connors is definitely in play. There's a lot of guys in the 7K that are in play. I mean, right off the bat, I could start lineups with Homa, one or two of Fitz, Homa, Woodland, Henley, Connors, Cameron Young. I'm not a Sahith Theegala guy. He does grade out pretty well, so maybe I'll look a little bit deeper into him, but I haven't been playing much Sahith Theegala. And low 7K range, let's see. Russell Knox grades out great across the board. So, yeah, I'll, of course, have some Russell Knox exposure. And I'll look a little bit deeper into Eric Van Rooyen and Ryan Palmer and Tom Hoagie. So, like I said, a lot of good names in the 7K range. Even Taylor Gooch, I kind of skipped over, who played well through 3 rounds last week, is worth going back to. All right, 6K. And then we'll get you out of here for the first look. Top guys that show up. Let me go a little bit higher in terms of our model ranking just to get a nice look at it. Only a few. So I did the top 25% in our overall rank just to see the top guys. Bubba Watson, 6,900. Interestingly enough, I think he actually, this isn't a Bubba track, but I feel like he's had a couple good events here over the years. Could be completely wrong, but let's take a peek. A couple good ball striking weeks. No top 10, so 0. So may just fade him off of that alone. I know course history I mentioned doesn't hold much weight, but if no one's shown any upside, I think I saw a trend like 9 of the last 11 winners have finished at least, T4 or better one time in the last 5 years or something, or any time in their history maybe. Bubba has shown nothing. So gaining off the tee, losing around the green approach, and irons have not been good. So I don't know. I probably still have some exposure to Bubba. He'll be super low, and so it won't take very much. Yeah, I'm not too afraid of that. I'll play a little bit of Bubba. Brian Harmon, we mentioned his course history the last couple of years. He's at 6,900. Good, looks good. Patton Kazire, 6,900. Mito Pereira, 6,700. Sebastian Munoz has been playing well. Played well last week. I think he helped take down 50K for somebody. He's a very good birdie maker across the board. Par 3, par 4, par 5, and then approach buckets are fine. They're not popping, but again, he's 6,700. Taylor Moore, I like that. And then Hayden Buckley looks good, but I don't know if I can do it. He's 6K, so maybe it's worth a punt. His weighted prox is good. We have a good number of rounds. We have 9 rounds from him, so good is relative. So maybe take a chance on Hayden Buckley. And like I said, well, my core article will be out Wednesday. It'll be out tomorrow, and then Wednesday will be the plays, usually by noon. And we'll be back for excuse me. We'll be back for the final look on Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So appreciate everybody tuning in. This is just under an hour. Hopefully this helps out. I'm sorry it wasn't an interactive show. It just worked out that with the pricing, I could do this in the middle of the day and have it done for you. So hopefully this does help. Again, I highly encourage you, if you haven't already, just use the code. Try it for a week or a month. Certainly for the showdown, but the overall data is really good. And we work really hard with the showdown data, which I think once you see it once and use it for showdown, you won't go back, because it's extremely valuable to use comparing golfer to golfer from the EAP perspective versus just, this guy gained strokes on approach. Means zero, means absolutely nothing. So don't take my word for it. Go check it out. Again, there's a sample if you just want to just sample it and see what all is offered, but highly encourage you to try it out. Our prices are pretty reasonable. And, again, we're very receptive to feedback. If you want to hop in Discord and give us feedback or ask stuff. I mean, we've added like probably 6 or 7 different stats in the last 2 weeks for guys playing the Honda, and last week at the API for like par 5 scoring, to try to make it as much good data, valuable data for showdown as possible. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, this is sponsored by 4ballfantasy.com. So check out 4ball. That's the number 4, ballfantasy.com. And then at Fantasy Golf Bag, the code is BAG22. So we'll see you guys later. Thank you for tuning in, and best of luck this week. Should be a fun week. Bye.